What's good, folks? It's Nightmare Frame here with a new Warframe video. And you want to know what's funny? It's that I've never done a Lavos video. This is literally the first one. And let's be honest, we're not counting the one where I talk about Archon continuity. That's something else. This is actually legitimately the first Lavos video, all because of one augment that turned Lavos into Sarin without spores, but still most of Sarin, kinda a little bit, but still you should check it out. It's an awesome augment, 100% worthwhile. That augment in question is Valence Formation. That ties into his passive, but first let's actually talk about his passive, because it is confusing because he has two parts of his passive. Here, his first passive, Energy and Universal Orb give Lavos status immunity for 10 seconds. There's something you gotta understand about this first of all. So when he uses his third ability, I'll get into that, he converts all orbs on the ground into universal health orbs. They will literally look like red orbs with some blue aura around them. Those are universal health orbs, meaning they count for both health and energy with one orb. And once he picks up these universal orbs, he gains status immunity for 10 seconds. There is a slight cooldown of 5 seconds. However, you can bypass that cooldown if you have a companion, literally a pet or sentinel, equipped with synth fiber. For example, my Dariga here has both synth deconstruct and synth fiber. This helps me drop some more health orbs, and this helps me pick up more health orbs to help boost my companion's armor. So with this mod equipped, you can bypass that cooldown. Very nice. Notice how I have health and energy orbs. If I run over and pick up these health and energy orbs, I do get my status immunity buff. That's another cool thing right there. So I don't necessarily have to convert into universal health orbs, as you can see. If you look on the bottom right corner, you can see that I have Toxin on 1, Cold on 2, and Electric on 3, while the fourth ability is grayed out because I did replace it with a Helminth ability. As for this build, we're not using that fourth ability, because this is a pure weapon platform Lavos, not an ability DPS Lavos. So when you hold down the first ability, you now get a Toxin infusion on your abilities, not on your weapons just yet. However, with Valence Formation, if I cast an ability, now I apply that Toxin buff onto all of my weapons with a guaranteed status application. That means force procs. However, this status application is a separate instance of damage. Now, for those who don't understand, let me explain this. So I brought up the historics over here for this demonstration. As you can see on the bottom right corner, it has these things called quills. Switching between them with the alternate fire, I can go from poison, fire, electric, and ice. 4 singular elemental combinations, similar to Lavos' abilities. Now, this weapon already is modded for virulent heat. However, if you have an element which combines into the existing elemental combination on your weapon, usually you'll get an additional bonus to that elemental damage. As the weapon is modded for virulent heat and have ice, you would think, hey, that ice is going to go into that viral. But not with the historics. I can get viral heat and cold, because that ice quill is a separate instance of damage with a forced application, similar to what Lavos' new augment can do. So now, if I hold down the first ability, which gives me Toxin, I can cast any of Lavos' abilities to then get that Toxin buff on my weapons. Even the second ability, which does cold, but now I get Toxin, as you can see on the top right corner, Valence Formation. But check this, when I shoot them, I would get viral, Toxin, heat, and cold. And of course, the weapon has cucumber, so I'll get additional instances of status application. That's the cool part about this ability. It's a separate instance of damage with a guaranteed proc application. So for example, the Argonak here, it's not really good with procs, but as you can see, I'm dealing guaranteed Toxin. I combine it. Now I'm guaranteed corrosive. Hold down that and this viral, but of course we don't care about the viral application because we have Nourish. This is how the new augment works. It's a separate instance of damage, not combining with any of your modded elements, which is actually very good. and very strong. That means you can go with viral, corrosive, gas, electric. Oh, it's so good. However, there is a few caveats with this augment. It does not scale with strength, so it's stuck at its base 200% strength. It does scale with duration, so pumping in duration is a huge boon to this build. And the second downside to this is that you cannot have multiple instances of these elements. But here's another thing I'm pretty sure you just have noticed. I have viral right now. If I want to activate a new elemental combination, unfortunately, we have to lose our previous version. So every elemental infusion gets overwritten. That's the downside as well. So right now, activated magnetic, we lose that viral for magnetic. Corrosive, we now have corrosive and no longer magnetic. So you can only have one instance of elemental combination. Since this is a weapon platform build, I have two variations of it, a melee variation and a gun variation. So let's take a look at the melee version of this build. I'm going to be using a dagger with the Argonak to get some juicy armor strip. So quickly, I'm going to activate my first and third to get the corrosive infusion. Use my second ability to activate it. Use my first. Use my third, and then use my first. And now I can refresh my abilities again, so I can cast these whenever I want, thanks to Swift Bite. Now, notice I'm dealing corrosive and electric. Activate Nourish. Now I have viral, corrosive, electric, all in one. But my weapon does have its own elements, and thanks to melee influence, I'm able to spread all of these status applications to all these enemies. Look at that beautiful, beautiful elemental destruction. That's how good this combination is. And now, if I want to refresh it, hold down the first and the third, use his abilities, and I get my corrosive. First ability, second, use the third to refresh some cooldowns, and then use the first ability again to reduce cooldowns. His second ability is really good for crowd control because it applies so many cold procs and slows down enemies for some additional survivability. So that's really nice. On top of that, cold procs give you bonus critical damage, but we're not dealing with crits here. It's just pure elemental status application. And we're shredding these steel path enemies. And if you didn't realize, my Dariga, of course with Arc Coil, is then applying its own elemental combination with magnetic and heat. But if we have Nourish on there, it buffs that to magnetic, viral, electric, and heat, because Arc Coil is also electric. And this boosts Condition Overload on my melee weapon. Look at all these enemies, all frozen. First ability, third ability, first ability again. Yeah, that's the combo right there. Third ability is back up. That means first ability. Oh, I hate that Swift Bite is a mandatory augment for this dude. All right, here comes the Acolyte. Just watch how stupid this is. Even if violence comes, it really doesn't matter, because we already have a nice base elemental combination. So I'm not even going to target the Acolyte. And look, Acolyte has no armor anymore. And we're not even attacking the Acolyte, by the way. Just dying. I'm not even going to focus on the Acolyte. It's just going to die from all these status applications. Dead. Don't even have to look at this little tool. All right, here we are in Steel Path yet again with a gun loadout. Usually you would see people running the turret and all that. Come on, you've seen the turret a billion times right now. So let's try something different with the Latron. There we go. And once we get it, there, just a one shot. Preferably, green shards will also be really nice for this, so you can get the armor strip. I know that Latron has the final evolution to get the armor strip, but if you're just going with raw damage over here, elemental damage, you're not going to see the puncture procs pronking that consistently to get that armor strip. So green shards are just going to be a lot more consistent for this. Alright, here we are back in the orbiter. Take a look at the weapon platform Lavos. We're starting off with the melee loadout. As you can see, I do have Archon Shards. What do these Archon Shards do? Well, simple, casting speed. Imagine letting animations shine. So boom, boom, casting speed. Unfortunately, I didn't have a regular shard, so I had to use one of my Tile Forge. But yeah, just use 2 regular casting speed shards to get that natural talent, improving your animations so they don't shine. And the combination of your Argonak and Dagger is that age-old bond, so you can get armor strip on every single hit your Dagger does, including the status AoE application that you get from gas, electric, and melee influence. How do we mod the Argonak? That's it. Anything else? No. This is it. Slap on your dexterity for that combo duration. And for my Dagger, you can use whatever dagger you want, literally. You can go with the Inadem, which I did showcase in my Voltan Inadem, but I'm sticking with my juicy Shayura's Wrath. It is adept, trust me. It is built from the Bala Pei Varji Tujai. Boom, juicy. Pointed wind as the stance, and make sure you have your condition overload because listen, we're priming a lot with this build. Range, gas, and electric. This is what you want. Weeping Wounds for the status chance increase, Berserker's Fury to not let animations shine, your faction damage multiplier because you're dealing damage over time, and this is going to multiply that damage a second time with its multiple ticks. And of course, every initial hit is also going to get multiplied thanks to this mod. Melee Influence, you proc electric, trigger it, it spreads all of those procs to nearby enemies within 20 meters. Use your Triumph just for that additional combo count chance. Otherwise, use any dagger you want. Just make sure you follow this build. That's it. For our focus school, we have Madarai. Why Madarai? Well, it's because of not letting animations shine yet again. And if you want, you do have Void Strike if you're fighting against any Thrax in the lowest survival, and Sling Strength for some additional strength which applies to all of your abilities, but a lot more beneficial on the Nourish buff. And with your secondary, just make sure you have Dexterity Arcane. Otherwise, the build doesn't matter. And now taking a look at the Lavos builds. Oh wow, it doesn't have any mods, because we're going to go at this one by one. First, we're going to start off with the melee loadouts, and that means the arcanes are going to be slightly different from the gun loadout. Number 1, we're going to use Arcane Reaper. This gives us health regen and armor on melee kill. Pretty huge. And then slap on Blessing for some additional health. So we get armor and health. Yes, this is a health tanking build. In the aura, I'm going to run Combat Discipline. You lose health every time you kill an enemy, but then you heal your allies. However, this is to trigger Nourish's Viral Farts. So, win-win. We get to spread viral even more consistently. Otherwise, use whatever aura you want. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Now we're going to slap on Valence Formation. This is our first augment. And then Swift Bite. You need this. If you don't have this augment, like Lavos is just doo-doo water. This is annoying because it is a mandatory freaking augment. This should be part of his ability to begin with. So yeah, it reduces the cooldowns of Lavos' ability when you use your first ability on 4 targets. Nothing lower. Now we're going to slap on Narrow-Minded for our duration, and Primed Continuity, so we get that 254 duration. All of this is to buff Valence Formation. And then for some added survivability, going to slap on Adaptation. And since we have negative range and we want our abilities to hit, we want some spread on Nourish, we're going to slap on Augur Reach, Stretch, and in the Exilus, we have Cunning Drift. So that's 124 range. Why is it so low? It should be higher. Well, it's because of Narrow-Minded. And then our final mod is going to be Precision Intensify. This is granting my 4th ability 90% strength. And what happens to be my 4th ability? Well, it's Nourish. This is how we get the strength on Nourish. The energy multiplier does not matter for Lavos because he doesn't have any energy. He's a cooldown Warframe. Now, if you're doing the gun build, there's going to be 3 changes. Number 1, you're going to change the aura to Corrosive Projection, or anything else. And if you're using green shards, well, that's even better. And for a lot more consistency, as you're not going to be in enemies' faces as much, I would slap on the best mod in the game, because spending less time on your butt is a huge DPS increase. And a Riz increase, by the way. And since we're not killing enemies with melee, we're going to change Reaper to Arcane Guardian. This gives us 900 armor when we take damage, and we are going to take damage quite a bit. But otherwise, yeah, aura can be whatever you want. If you don't have Prime Surefooted, the best mod in the game, use Handspring. Or if you want, you can drop a bit of range so you can run Surefooted and Fortitude together. And this is the Lavos combination, either the gun or melee loadout. Speaking of the gun builds, let's take a look at our 3 suggestions. And speaking of weapons, everybody and their mom are going to be using the Torrid. So let's start off with the Torrid build. For the evolutions, you're going to have that one, this one, and this one. Here we have our Torrid loadouts, and we're not using any Merciless or anything like that, but I'll explain why. We have Serration and Galvanized Aptitude for our base damage. We already have Corrosive from Lavos, Nourish, again from Lavos, so the weapon already has Corrosive and Viral, but the weapon itself is Innate Toxin, and those elemental infusions do not combine with the innate element of the weapon, so we're going to have Corrosive, Viral, and Toxin. And what better arcane to use than Primary Blight? On Toxin status effect from the weapon itself, not external sources, from the weapon itself, will grant you critical damage and multi-shot, and this stacks up to 40 times. And multi-shot is a huge boon to your beam weapons, and Torrid Incarnate just happens to be a beam weapon. We have fire rate, crit chance, crit damage, some more multi-shot, our faction damage to multiply our damage against the enemy, and finally prime fast hands. This actually helps our Incarnate transformation. Reload speed is a huge buff to Incarnates because you charge it and instantly transform. And the other weapon that I do recommend is the Skyburner's Oath, aka the Latron Incarnate. You're going to have that one. And then we have increased magazine. This is of course to help us build up our Incarnate a bit better. It doesn't have great magazine, and you can end up one-tapping enemies and you're not getting your Incarnate charge. That's annoying. Finally, you have the increased crit chance and critical multiplier. This is actually going to be better than the armor strip one because you have so much elemental weighting, you're not going to see puncture procs as much. So this is why this is way more useful. And you can run green shards, so it's not worthwhile to use this. And for the build, base damage is of course Merciless. You're going to have your faction damage mod, crit chance, crit damage, more crit damage. If you want, you can switch this crit damage to Hunter Munitions if you want. That's going to give you a bit more ad clear. As you can see, it's quite similar to the Torrid build, but with a slight few changes. And because we're using Lavos, why not use the Cedo as well? Again, similar concept to the Torrid with Primary Blight, because with the Cedo's alternate fire, it throws out a glaive that bounces between targets and procs the 4 primary elements, your heat, toxin, electric, and cold. And this triggers Primary Blight, so it's a nice combo. And the good thing about this glaive is that it doesn't consume your ammo. And the Cedo itself has innate condition overload, so pairing up with Galvanized Savvy, it's even more damage. Base damage, your crit chance, crit damage, your multi-shot, and here I have just electric, because why not? If you want, you can swap this to Hunter Munitions. It's up to you. And with this combo, we have Viral, Corrosive, and Electric. If you want, you can also do Heat. It's just fine. Whatever you want, it's just giga damage, and you're shredding enemies. But fire rate is a huge must on this. If you want, you can add a bit more fire rate yet again, so it feels a bit more comfortable to use. And for the gun build companion, we're going to be using the Worm. Just make sure you have Negate, Guardian, Manifold Bond, Reinforced Bond, and Tenacious Bond. All of this is super important. And finally, the Volcox, or the Volcock, up to you. And you want to have more of the Vigilante mods that will increase your critical tier. As you saw, all the other builds had a Vigilante supplies, and putting these other Vigilante mods will increase its set bonus. Now for the melee loadout, you're going to be running the Diriga. The Diriga build is going to have Arc Coil, Guardian, Calculated Shot. You can interchange this whichever one you want first, but I would say Calculated Shot if you want more consistency with the priming. Make sure you have Synth, Deconstruct, and Synth Fiber. This way, you don't have to run PSF and you drop more health orbs more consistently because you're in enemies' faces. And this also helps you out with additional healing because we are using a max rank combat discipline. And of course, the weapon I'm going to be using is the Hellstrom. This is going to prime a bit more consistently. And since I have Nourish, and Nourish is a elemental buff that's given to all allies, it also applies to your Sentinel. And if you have it on your Sentinel, there's no point running Viral on the Sentinel. So why not go with Magnetic and Heat? So we have Viral, Magnetic, Heat, and Electric coming from my companion. Heavy Caliber here is just to help spread the projectiles from the Hellstrom, while the Arc Coil deals AoE damage to the enemies that are in our faces, since we're meleeing with this loadout. So yeah, folks, this is the first time where I actually made a Lavos video, and I enjoyed playing Lavos, all thanks to that friggin' augment. And sometimes I think to myself, these augments don't really need to be augments and be part of their kits. But Valence Formations is actually a good one for Lavos. So yeah, guys, if you did enjoy this video, I do hope you leave a like, share, and subscribe. And for more Warframe content, streams, and so much more, do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.